Well, hello there, everybody. Listen to a little bit of Alvin Lee. Man, I'll tell you what. Hope you're doing music over there on the other side, Alvin. Welcome, everyone. How are you doing? So good to see everybody. It is Friday, and I am so appreciative that you're here. Thank you. Thank you for making memories for myself, for sure. If you're here, then they're your memories too. So, favor be upon us all. Nothing missing, nothing broken. This is going to be one of those sobering shows. I mean, it sucks that you have to even deal with the fact that there are those who call themselves humans that are involved whatever the hell is coming, and it's coming. Um, First of all, before we get right out of here, I want you to, as he gets back over here. Hey, you dude. Hey, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Um, so keep this in your head, all right? Because we're going to get back to this. Um, it sucks that, that it seems like this is unfolding. So pay attention to wherever you are in the world. Um, find your country and then look at the associated color scheme, and you'll understand a little bit more as we get further into this. So let me put that there. And then we go back over here. Yeah, the bus is pulled out and fueled up and ready to go. Got the vibrations all about us, nothing missing, nothing broken. So let's get into this. Another state, New York State. Apparently, the state police, governor, other officials are now warning people on this eclipse that they need to stock up for food, water, fuel. They should expect cellular phone service to go down, and be prepared to have enough fuel, food, water, medicine, etc., for like 3 days. I mean, do they know something we don't know? Well, hello, Nina. My Mystic channel got taken down. Why? Well, that is weird. What's up with that? You'll have to let me know, and we'll get that out over there. Let me do that right there. Okay. So I am now fully engaged again. Anyway, uh, sorry to hear that. That's weird. Hmm. Anyway, so that is just, I mean, I really don't get it. It's an eclipse. I mean, I didn't give out any warnings in 2017. I mean, we were stuck in a traffic jam heading up into Wyoming that lasted for like 5, 6 hours. No one told us to prepare, with food, water, medicine. What? All right. So, as they would say, fully engaged. And they are. Hello, Loretta. Shirley, good to see you. Hey, Flat Risk, what's up? Bonnie, good to see you, dear. Robert, what's up? Lady Ellie, Emperor Rex. Jargo, good to see you. Go as well. My friend Gilbert out there, and so many more. All right, you ready? So I put this little presentation to help us all get on the same page as to, hey, Susie Q, Lost in Space, Amy, don't get off it either. We've had eclipses before. Why is this one different? Amy, exactly. It's an eclipse. It happens quite regularly on the planet. Yeah, yeah. But It's odd because I do watch, the news and try to get a good perspective on all points of view. But I'm telling you, something is up. And when you begin to see government officials, reporters, ex-congressmen, senators begin to say the same thing, you'd be wise to listen. You'd be wise to stop and ponder what is being said. They cannot do anything unless they tell us first. And if they tell us first, then it tells me that there may be the slimmest of opportunities to prevent it. But having said that, we're going to talk about what is a black swan event. All of us here have lived in black swan events. If you get old enough, you will live through one. I've lived through many. Those of you that of the baby boomers generation, many, even the millennials, and to a lesser extent, Generation Zers. Um, and in every case, there were signals. Now, if you happen to be observant enough, you could take certain precautions and begin to look at different strategies. And it sounds sick, I know, but actually profit off such a black swan event. Now, it's a new term, but we'll get into that. So what we do know is that something is going to happen. It is said that we are experiencing a black swan event even now. It's like we're right in, take a surfing analogy. You're waiting out there and you're waiting on the swells, and what you're at the break line, you're waiting for that one perfect swell that will give you the momentum up and that you can ride that crest right at its peak and then get the momentum of the thrill of the ride. And it is said that we're there right now. I happen to think they may be right. This man here, I know former Congressman Ron Paul. He's a good guy. He really is. Very personable, very honest, very open. He has faced enormous amount of ridicule, but to his opponents, he's been right. He was right about 9/11, right about 2008, right about 2020. And I happen to think he is right about 2024. And when a person like Congressman Paul actually uses the word itself, black swan event, he now becomes in this ever-growing group of distinguished men and women who are saying the same thing. This was yesterday. Warning, catastrophic black swan event coming late 2024. This is on the Tucker Carlson show yesterday. Check him out. If you haven't, you should. But anyway, this is exactly what he said. He said it's coming in late 2024. Some say summer, but I've heard over and over again, it looks like it's the fall. Yeah. And the credibility of Tucker Carlson stands up. He is the gold standard. I like Tucker. He brings it out. But it's not just Tucker, it's not just Congressman Paul, but you have Catherine Hedrick, who is now facing jail time. She was former Fox Pentagon correspondent. well known in the intelligence community. She has many, many contacts. CBS swooned her over with a very nice contract, and then she hit a wall. And she spoke of this in a Sunday morning roundtable, what to expect in 2024. General Mike Flynn, uh, you can say what you will about the man, but he knows a lot more others than you and I do. So why are they all predicting a black swan event? Well, we have to define what is a black swan event so everyone knows. It's actually, we're going to see here, but they're rare and unexpected. Black swan events that change the course of history. 9/11 changed the course of history. Some can say that it changed reality, because the world of those of us who were alive then, our world prior to 9/11 never came back. And it could be said of other such events. The term comes from Nasom Nicholas Taleb in his New York best time seller, The Black Swan. He was actually the one who brought this term in, and it's a very recent term. And it's about basically dealing with the impact of the highly improbable. And that's important. There's the theory behind it is since Roman times, all swans are white was a fundamental truth. A Dutch expedition to Australia in 1726 captured 2 black swans, proving their existence and disproving the theory. Black swans are rare events. Black swans have an extreme impact. Black swans can only be predicted retrospectively, not prospectively. A black swan event which cannot be foreseen, but when it occurs, changes the whole understanding of the market. And I dare say you could say in society as well. 9/11 changed our government. The United States does not have the same government that we had prior to 9/11. Much more authoritarian, big brotherish all the way across. I can remember going into the airports when there was no security. I remember the days when you could actually go to the airport and they had lookouts on top of the terminal. You could go up there and watch the planes. No, that world is gone, baby. Again, the theory is outlined by Nicholas Taleb's book, The Black Swan, published in 2010. It is so-called as prior to discovering black swans in Australia, Europeans believed that all swans were white. In fact, a lack of knowledge and experience showed that their understanding of nature was fundamentally mistaken, flawed. And if they had nature wrong, could you only imagine what they did to religion? All observed swans are white, hence all swans are white. By assuming some event is impossible, people and companies become complacent, and this leads to lack of preparedness. They have severe repercussions in all ways. All of our lives were fundamentally changed after 9/11. I would go on to say, after the event of September 8th, 2008, where even as according to George Bush, President Bush at the time, we were 1 second away from midnight. That's how precarious the financial markets were. That close. We're there now. These events are considered as catastrophic events that have a high level of impact on the global economy. All the science, logic, astrology fail in predicting such events. I haven't heard anyone reading tarot cards or anyone predicting this. It's all lovey-dovey, unicorns and popcorn and cotton candy, baby. Not criticizing. I just haven't. Maybe there is, but I haven't seen it. If there is, let me know. Love to be able to get that person on. All the strategic planners and thinkers do plan or predict the occurrence of such events. Now, this one goes back all the way to when I remember the first stock market crash in my lifetime. In fact, from Black Monday came the movie. Yes, who knows? Wall Street, Oliver Stone. Great movie, by the way. So that was the first one. Then I remember the Gulf War. Then I remember the collapse of the Soviet Union. Then I remember and lived through and actually took it in the shorts in with the dot-com bubble. Then there was 9/11. Then there was the SARS outbreak. Then the Great Recession, of which many debate whether we actually ever came out of it. Then you had Fukushima. Then you had the crude oil crisis, the Brexit, and then COVID. All of these were black swan events. Every one of these events changed us, changed our reality. And what's coming? So to be considered a black swan event, an event must meet three criteria. The event must come as a surprise, at least from the point of view of the observer. Now think about that. So for one group, this isn't a black swan event at all. They know. Then you have the other group who don't know. They're observing. The impact of the event must be widespread and far-reaching. Finally, and most importantly, the event must later be rationalized through hindsight. In other words, observers speak of the event as if it were not a surprise and that all evidence available indicated the event was possible, but was simply overlooked. Some examples of black swan events include stories of the Minuet line prior to World War II and the sudden rise of the internet. Now, I read this and I went, Now, I know it was the ARPANET and the Ethernet and then the World Wide Web, the internet. All right. But you'd have to argue that the rise of the internet was crazy. I lived through that time. Valuations for startup companies were freaking insane. We loved it. The higher the, cap table looked, the better. And it was quite a ride. Anyway, so a true black swan event is rare. Again, large scale, large impact, unpredictable, at least using the then current assessment methods. In a modern parlance, far out on the modeling probability tail so that we cannot predict it using our current assessment tools. This has got paradox written all over it. Well, if you can't define it, if you can't foretell it, then how can you predict it? How can these people that are in the know be out there stating that it's coming? I thought about this. And one possibility to this is for them, it's already happened. We're just catching up. Again, the so-called black swan events are highly unlikely to happen, but again, would have severe consequences if they did. Now, Nisam, he came up with some quotes here. And remember, this is his theory, but it ties in. Knowledge, information is bad for knowledge. Boy, we could have a whole roundtable on that one. The three most harmful addictions are heroin, carbohydrates, and a monthly salary. The problem with experts is that they do not know what they do not know. Ideas come and go, stories stay. Death is often a good career move for an author. The wise man listens to the meanings, the signals. The fool only gets the noise. It's not a good idea to take forecasts from someone wearing a tie. Da, da, da. And here are some examples. Again, the crash of 2008, Zimbabwe's hyperinflation in 2008, the 2001 dot-com bubble, 9/11, the BRICS plan for uncertainty. Think of rare events, and that could prove catastrophic by strict financial regulations, strengthening the financial institutions, plugging the loopholes. Look how many publicly and privately traded companies that the U.S. taxpayer bailed out in 2009 through 2000, too big to fail, right? We've never seen any of that money come back. In fact, I'm about to say something that is going to be proven out here as we go in on this presentation. This is about money. It's about what happened today as well in Congress, passing a 1.2 or 1.7 trillion, I think it's 1.2 trillion dollar omnibus. We don't have 1.2. And when this fiscal year ends, the United States will have borrowed and spent nearly $7.2 trillion. Now, the logic is given by the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury Department that the reason why we can do this is because we have a GDP and we have land. We have assets that far out total our financial obligations, both secure and unsecure. If only that was true. But that's what's being sold and has been sold. Now, some point in time, that catches up. Because it's like any good audit. You find out that the books were cooked. Keep that in mind. So you can see the disruptions and the intensities. And if you look at this, each one of these events were higher, felt more intense, more impactful, more disruptive. When we look at what's potentially facing us is potentially the extension of World War III, which has already been happening in the digital world, cyber attacks. Sudden and unexpected climatic changes in weather, economic disruptions, political disruptions, another unforeseen pandemic. So as we get out of these, we know they're rare, they're massive, and you can't really predict them proactively. Unless you're like playing a roulette game. I mean, you know, the house has the odds, but you can minimize the odds by making it a 50-50 proposition instead of a 35-1 proposition. Modern roulette tables now, I think it's all the way up to 38. All right, so I thought this was interesting because there's two things that I see right now. Mediocrity is limited randomness or deviation mainly due to physical constraints, height, weight. Linear relationships often exist between variables, and prediction is possible. That's how AI does it. This does it quicker with much more points. But I found this last one, extremism, can have extreme randomness and deviations with no physical constraints, i.e., financial markets, ebook sales. It's scalability. In other words, the potential for infinite growth with little or no extra resources means that outliers can drastically shift the average. Prediction is impossible. So the occultist within me goes, really? I've studied enough of these. Well, of course, they don't exist, Wayne. And then you're saying God doesn't exist. Because if there's anything in the spirit realm that can see time in a non-linear fashion, then that prediction would not only be possible, it would be certain. Would it not? Maybe we just don't have really anyone that actually practices invoking demons or angels, wanting their and demanding their physical appearance. No, I have a lot of people say, I love what you talk, I love what you present, but there ain't no way I'm ever going to invoke any of these demons you talk about or the angels. You see? Now, we just studied this map. You see, this map is now going to come into play. Because whatever is about to happen, it's the United States that's going to get decimated in this, along with a couple of others. So World War III has already begun, started a decade ago, maybe even longer than that. We're going to see that in a minute here. And I thought this was real interesting because here was some top 10 predictions by Gardner. I used to be a client of Gardner, so and I depended heavily back in the day on their research. We paid handsomely for it, along with a couple of others. So here was the top 3 predictions for 23 and beyond. I thought this was really interesting. So in 23, the prediction was privacy rights to cover 5 billion citizens and 70% of the global GDP. Well, they got that right. Consolidations would take place financially in 2025, along with many other things. 80% of the unified web and cloud services from a single SSE platform. 2025, there would be virtually zero trust. We're already there. 72% of the American public do not believe the media. They believe that the mainstream media is compromised and pushes out an agenda that many times proves to be not factual. That number is paralleled as well with what people feel and trust about their government. We have not seen the numbers of the mass, and these demographics cover all the different social economic groups, that the distrust for the government is at an all-time high. Third party, 6% will use cybersecurity risk as a primary deterrent for business transactions. It's already there. When I was in the payment industry, I was part of the input on PCI's PSS, PCC, and all about keeping ahead of the hackers. It's almost impossible. But we now live in a time where we can see what happens if our airlines, transportation, medical, energy are hacked. The United States is more vulnerable than any other country on the planet for attack. And we're going to just see that there is this war going on, that it is incredible to watch. All right, 2025, ransomware threat. 30% of nations to pass legislation on ransomware. Already there. In fact, many of the attacks that happened in 2024 were settled by companies paying large sums of money and not making any noise about it. Nothing in the press, no news. 2025, weaponizing OT will result in human casualties. 25, resilient, 70% of CEOs to mandate a culture of organizational resilience. Already there. Again, you look at the cyber attack. This is, the wars that our grandparents and ancestors fought. Not to say that there won't be battlefields, but this battlefield has casualties that are sometimes incalculable, and their casualties affect us here in the real world. And you can look at these 40 right now. 40% of all cyber attacks will be linked to session hijacking. 30% of organizations will experience increased data breaches due to credential theft. And credentials in the digital world is what we would call a handshake. I have one part of the token over here, you have the other token over here. And if the token is recognized, then we will form a connection. 55% of enterprises will expedite technology consolidation to simplify security. This is a real big deal because our government is very vulnerable. Truth be told, many of the government systems are adequated for the threat. And this just brings out by 2030 where they see these events. And this was by the European Union for cybersecurity. Supply chain, advanced disinformation, rise of the digital surveillance, authoritarianism, loss of privacy. 4, human error and exploited legacy systems within cyber physical ecosystems. 5, targeted attacks enhanced by smart device data. 6, lack of analysis and control of space-based infrastructure and objects. 7, the rise of advanced hybrid threats. Just put your imagination to that one. 8, skill shortages. For the United States, this is becoming a really big problem. The technology companies, what the high schools are turning out and what colleges are producing is basically what we called from hiring expectations is this glorified toilet paper. They have no real world experience. Their work ethics are questionable. And the fact is that they lack the basic skills, primarily mathematics, science, and believe it or not, English. Yeah. 9, cross-border service providers, a single point of failure. What we found out is that you can build the perfect fortress, but if you have trading partners who don't, well, you're going to get a bug. 10, artificial intelligence abuse. This is the number one thing that the world is now realizing. We've unleashed this thing, and holy crap, what do you do with it? So we're going to get into that as well so you can actually see this for yourself. Give me a second as I get out of there. So, sobering, is it not? Well, when we look at a couple of other things here real quick. So, we're going to talk for a second on what Deagle forecasted. And because we're going to get into some meat and bones behind these numbers in a way that probably you've not heard about before. But what we have to take a look at again are these huge drops in populations, subsequently huge drops in the GDP. Now, if you look particularly in the population of 2017, the expected decrease in population in 2025, you'll see here in this column is the percentage by change. Now, what I really want you to focus on as well is the GDP. These are huge hits. If the United Kingdom, in fact, sees this come to reality, there will be no United Kingdom. There's no government, no infrastructure, no commerce that can withstand this type of collapse. And in order for this type of collapse to take place, the theory is now being postulated that the numbers that the United States, the United Kingdom, others, but specifically the United States, is that the GDP reporting numbers have been altered, hyped, and that the reality is going to be, and this is how the Deagle report, we're going to read about this, began to make their predictions of this collapse. People have no idea what happens when your currency collapses. You can't buy anything. It shuts down everything. To have the type of reductions, 77%, the United States 68.5%, and just go down. And I thought it was curious when I came to Ukraine, there's a strange correlation going on here. That was one of the anomalies I found that I went, holy crap. They predicted this crash. Because I can tell you 4 years ago, there was none of this craziness of World War III over Ukraine. And how the Ukrainian government, along with NATO and the United States, the United Kingdom, are purposely suppressing what the casualty rates have actually been on the battlefield. And as we continue to go down, the numbers begin to decrease. You're seeing anything that would be under the 20% is survivable. It's going to hurt a little bit, but it's survivable. And of course, when you start getting into the single numbers, now, I found it really odd that when you begin to get into these single numbers, you start looking at these countries. And you have to ask yourself, well, what's going on here? I mean, we're seeing increases in GDP. In some cases, triple-digit projected increases in gross domestic products. And as you continue to go down here, the numbers get less and less until you hit where we basically come out to the even mark, where now you're seeing growth. And again, choose your country. Growth. Increases in GDP, again, triple digits. So commerce is still going on. Trading is still going on. Why? Primarily just the United States and United Kingdom. Russia's not impacted. China's not impacted. India to a lesser degree. I mean, just go down here and look at this. I mean, this doesn't make sense in some way. So you have to come in and say, all right, so what's the background to this? Well, I found an interesting blog, and I want to pull this up. And I think some of you will find this as interesting as I did. Let me get this over here. Here we go. So this is from a gentleman called the metallicaman.com. So I thought it was interesting how he pulled the background story. He says the Deagle Corporation, which has now, I believe, been acquired by Lockheed. The Deagle Corporation was a minor branch of U.S. military intelligence, one of the many secretive organizations would collect data for high-level decision-making purposes and prepares confidential briefing documents for agencies like the NSA and the United Nations and the World Bank. It's a work of love from some retired intelligent assets, and like most of us ex-spooks, it's hosted outside the United States. Just like MM here, we have very good reason to do so, reasons that are far too complex to get involved in right this moment. But we do know what we are doing. Never doubt that. Deagle is known, for example, to have contributed to the Stratford Report on North Korea. With this kind of pedigree, Deagle should be seen as a legitimate player in the intelligence community and not merely a disinformation asset. If so, then it must be assumed that the population predictions for 2025, as well as its industrial output predictions on a nation-by-nation basis, are based on strategic assumptions which are shared and well understood by other players in the intelligence community. Until the start of the COVID pandemic, many commentators were perplexed by the Deagle spreadsheets. Perhaps they were part of a psychological operation. However, in light of recent events, we're obliged to consider a possible connection between the projected massive reduction in population of certain countries, forecast by Deagle, and other trends going on right now. So what are their trends? Grab a hold of this. Devaluation of the dollar with an out-of-control American Congress. What happened today is complete validation across the board. Folks, a nation doesn't spend money like this. This is like children. You know, you put them in the Treasury, they have no idea that, and it's just that crazy. The strange insistence on the vaccine, the differences of the two technologies, a global pandemic that America is just fucking up royally, desire for a war with China, desire for a war with Russia, desire for a war with Iran, China, Russia, and Iran forming a unifying Asian bloc, race war in the United States, progressive onslaught and control of all electronic media, looming bubbles in just about every facet of American life, and so on and so forth. The Deagle scenario. The Deagle Corporation was asked to explain the thinking behind its strange set of population and output figures. While we cannot take its response at face value, it nonetheless paints a picture that is very familiar to the world we see now. And this is not an exaggeration at all. Consider, number one, the American fake GDP. This is important, folks. In short, they argue that the United States government has greatly overstated the real level of U.S. GDP. This means the country will be fatally exposed within the next economic crisis strikes. How can the GDP be so high that a full 61% of Americans are so poor that they do not pay federal income taxes at all? And then you look at the invasion from the borders, which we've now, and who knows what the estimates, some say 7, some go as high as 20 million. How does that work? How do you bring in that? And you're going to tell me we have a robust economy? No. I don't see it in the grocery stores. I have never seen Americans more down, more depressed. You can't even find concerts where people are really happy anymore. Why? Because they're in fear of being shot. And no matter what gathering, the pandemic scenario, they also take into account a pandemic scenario. Remember the document 201, Agenda 2030. All of this was part of these drills. Their term, caused by Ebola or a similar pathogen. This, they say, would cause an exceptionally high death rate, placing extreme pressure on healthcare providers across America and greatly reducing economic output. I mean, this is exactly what it is. The books are cooked. Have been. And you have to look back. When you look at the numbers each month on the inflation report and the unemployment, they're always revised. Always. But if you're leveraging trillions and trillions of dollars based upon a so-called book value, well, look what they did in New York. 3, a financial crisis with the US dollar. This pandemic could quickly spot, because that's the ones when we used to talk about contagions, it was always the Hong Kong contagion that, that the financial crisis would start in Hong Kong and then move through the world. And folks, I'm just going to bring out the reality. The U.S. Treasury has been monetizing the U.S. debt since 2010 that I know of. You can't go decade after decade in monetizing the debt or using quantitative easing. Someone has to pay the check. They go on to say, Deagle, the collapse of the Western financial system will wipe out the standard of living of its population while ending Ponzi schemes such as the stock exchange and the pension funds. Look what Congress has done to Social Security. Millions, tens of millions of Americans have paid into this fund, and you had Congress robbing it, never replenishing it, what they robbed from. And now they're going, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to support. Folks, this is what we're talking about. All of these indicators show that the system cannot withstand this kind of pressure. It's just like this administration's push on electric cars. The problem with this is not so much the electric car, it's the fact that the U.S. electrical grid system is 50 years antiquated. It cannot handle the additional load of what they're wanting to do here. It will break. Trying to figure it out. They try to explain the predicted dramatic fall in the population of the U.S. by reference to a massive outward migration of millions of Americans seeking economic relief in other countries. But this is unconvincing. They seem to concede this themselves when they add a further explanational factor, widespread suicide in response to economic distress. But this too is unsatisfactory. We don't see that happening. Their primary reason for predicting a colossal drop in the population of the U.S. by 2025, a fall of up to 70%, is the scale and severity of the alleged pandemic. Now, this pandemic is not necessarily a virus, financial. As they put it, the death toll would be horrible. So the map, they said, here's a map showing the prediction made in the forecast. You see that Asia is unscathed, while America and the West suffer horribly. Japan will lose 1/5 of its population. Australia will lose 1/3 of its population. Canada will lose 1/4 of its population. And the United States will lose almost 3/4 of its population. By all accounts, historically, the massive drop in population at this time is validated by the fourth turning predictions. The date and timing all agree with Strauss and Howe model for America. This model is United States centrist and acknowledges that different societies and different cultures have different turnings and generational changes. The casualty figures. The casualty figures are gargantuan. They are over and above what one would associate with such things as a civil war, which was 2 to 10% of the U.S. population, genocide from 25 to 99% of the population. For example, 77% of Tutsi's population of Rwanda, 85% of the population in the Junta ethnic group. In Cambodia, 70% of the total Cambodian populations were exterminated. Go watch the movie The Killing Fields. We tend to forget these things. These genocide events happened, but it shows you as well how they are isolated to countries. World War is equal to 6 to 9% of the population, World War II. And the global military empire would be 11%. Talks about Genghis Khan's legacy, one of the worthless, ruthless warriors who dominated. He slaughtered up to 40 million people. Get this on the scale, which represented 11% of the population. That was a huge culling of the male part of our species. And that's what wars do. They thin the herd out. They talk about the pandemic. The bubonic plague was a deadly pandemic that wiped out a massive chunk of the population in the world during the mid-1300s. In Europe alone, the plague wiped out 50% of the European population. You want to know why the Dark Ages happened? This is why. When you take that kind of swipe out of a society, a culture, a community, a government, collapse is what's going to happen. Nuclear war would be estimated between 30 to 85%. Economic collapse, they estimate in the population would be 1 to 30%. Based on the historical precedents and legal predictions, these kinds of numbers and figures can only be associated with an American-centered disaster, not really a global one. Because if it was a global disaster, then the casualty figures would be more uniform. The most likely candidate is a combination of 2 or possibly more contributors listed above. This is the Black Swan event. So here are some candidates. Here are some of the author's blog suggestion of candidate combinations that allows us to better understand how these enormous population casualty figures could be reached. 1, global pandemic and genocide. 2, global pandemic and civil war with genocide. Global pandemic and collapsing of the military industrial machine, the empire, with war. 4, global military empire and nuclear war with global pandemic. So in my mind, as I understand things, the only way that the kinds of predictions as determined by the forecast can manifest is through a combination of some horrific events that happen in one center geographic area. Indeed, these are truly shocking numbers and values, so shocking that it's simply not the extrapolation of its trends. It's an extrapolation, extrapolation, trends showing things either moving towards infinity or falling into a black hole. But there's no way to be able to quantify the data into numbers. So how the heck did they come up with these values that they're using? And they have come up with specific values and specific data. And it's all very highly specific, such as, get this, here are some of the specific numbers, countries that will suffer the greatest reduction in population, according to Deagle. Now, this was in 2014, US 70, go all the way down, Switzerland, Iceland, Sweden. That's pretty darn specific. I would say real. They talked about that they also used remote viewing, because I'm seeing my time is running out. So they used also remote viewers in this, and this goes on for quite a long time. If you would like to see this, let me know. I'll be more than happy to give it to you. So I want to hit another one. So this is World War III happening right now. You can see the United States is taking cyber attacks, launching cyber attacks. This is another one. This one, you watch this one, and there are at times the whole freaking, it's like this huge salvo, but it's going in trillions of bits. This is a war. You can see Russia, China, India lined up, South America, the United States, Australia. And you can see by the colors. You got scanners, you've got the anomalizers, you got intruders, DOS attacks, you have web attacks. It's already happening in the digital world. Top attackers are the United States, 58%, United Kingdom, 13%, China, 11%, Bulgaria, 11%, Netherlands, 11%. Top attacked is the United States, South Africa, Australia, Korea, and India. I sometimes leave this on my big monitor, and it's quite the freaking light show. But this is money. This is data gathering, data harvesting. You get into this, this is a living entity. It's mind-boggling. So, what did we learn from all of this today? Let me get out of here. I want to make sure I got that. Yeah, I do. Okay. So anyway, as the war continues, marching on, it's real. Something's going to happen. I mean, again, if you just look at this from, and we don't typically cover this, but actually we do. We talk about prosperity. You know, financial wealth and increase is part of prosperity. Health is up the most highest of all prosperities. If your spirit is prosperous, then the rest of your life will be prosperous, even in the midst of an economic collapse. More millionaires were made in the Great Depression than any other time. The dot-com bust brought forth more millionaires than ever before. So it's not all doom and gloom, except when you tape in the fact that 2/3 of a population will be dead. That's a lot of death. I mean, the morgues couldn't keep up with that. You couldn't have enough incinerators. crematoriums. You couldn't build them fast enough. The stench, the disease. I mean, there's plenty on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all of them got great series on such scenarios as this. The one that the world we left behind. It's about cyber attacks. They're deadly. They could cause catastrophic destruction. And what scares the crap out of me when I think about it is that they've let in 20 million people that no one knows about. That's crazy. Listen, migration is good for none. You look at what the United States would not be what it is without migration. The potato famine that brought so many of the Irish people and so many other ethnic groups into the United States added to our culture, added to our wellness, but it was controlled. And I would dare say, if you look at it, when that migration period was right before the Great Collapse. Again, I'm going, is this coincident? I'm just reading some of this. So, Grace, I agree with you. So, folks, I know that this has been really deep, but listen, it appears something, and I just can't accept that occultists, witches, practicing warlocks, sorcerers would be so complacent to allow something to happen. Back in the day, I would say we need a miracle. I mean, why don't we create our own miracle? We certainly seem to have that ability. Anyway, have a good one, Wade. Be sure to check out Nina and her channel on the non-religious truth channel and the rest. Yeah, folks, this is, it's not edifying, but it's sobering. So at least we now have an understanding. You know, you can begin to adjust, do your own research, see, back up. You know, we all should do that. But we can also take care of one another. Even though we're virtual in this realm, it counts. In that virtual realm, we're strong. We're mighty. I have a sense that we're in the physical as well, regardless of what our bodies may or may not be. So anyway, have fun, everybody. But you know, the thing I always thought, did y'all remember the movie, The Russians Are Coming? The Russians Are Coming. I know I'm dating myself, but why couldn't we have it in that type of a thing, you know, where it's peace and love, hugs, saying, how you doing, comrade? You know, no. They want us to hate each other. We're not going to do it. So we're going to love one another. Love one. Mary Wins always says that. Hey, Ruby, what's up? Paul Joe. Grace? Yes. This is a reality check. Yeah. I think we are. I agree with you, darling. All right, Jackie. Much love to you over the weekend, Lady Ellie. Thank you. Maximum Overdrive. Yes. Thank you, lady. That was an interesting. Emilio Estevez played in that movie. I always thought that was really odd. And then the gal for Homer Simpson or Lisa, right? Anyway. All right. Hey, Flight Risk. What's up? Gaia, much love to you, darling. You and Paul and F Kitty, Chris, thank you. So see y'all on Monday. You know, go out and dance. Listen, you know, if they're going to do it, well, we might as well meet with them with absolute joy and, you know, do like the movie Tribes. We'll put a flower